I just got done attending the Chloe Gong event that was in Massachusetts that I had today, and it was so interesting. She is adorable, her accent adorable, so well spoken, funny, Taylor Swift references. What more could you want? She did like a personalized signing at the end, and she was so sweet, and I feel like there was so much to say. I wanted to tell her that I accidentally read Foul Lady Fortune before any of the other books in the Secret Shanghai series. I didn't. I got a wonderful cat doodle in my book, though. I also asked a question, and everybody turned around and looked at me, and I just blubbered on, despite trying to think out my question. God, everybody turned around like at once, and I was like, oh my God. But it was so interesting. She was lovely. There were some interesting things she said, though, and she was comparing a lot of like characters in books to Taylor Swift songs, which was really interesting. I wrote down one because I knew I would forget it, but she said book two, because Immortal Longings is going to be a trilogy. She said book two is I did something bad coded. That is also how she described the main character, Kala, I think her name is. I am very excited to read this when I get home. But it was so interesting because she talked about like her thought process when it was like publishing the books, that the original duology, These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, were supposed to be one book originally when she sent it in to the publisher, and then it ended up being two books. It ended up being a duology. How she ended up wanting to write more for Rosalind, and it was really fun. Very fun. This was like my first author event, like getting to go in person and meet them and hear them discuss their book and ask questions. And I hope there are a lot more that I can go to soon. But now I have to drive. Oh God, how long is it to get home? Let me look. Oh, it's an hour and 50 minutes. This is kind of sad. Driving through flood warning? What the heck? But anyways, I'm gonna get home. It's gonna be like 10:30 by the time I get there because I have to stop and get gas and food. And I'll hopefully start some of this book despite how late it will be. But I didn't take a picture with her because I went to this solo and I didn't want to ask anyone, and the line was super long, but you bet your butt I was up quick to be like first in that line. And I didn't want to ask someone to like take a picture of me with her and like make it take longer, and my outfit is terrible and my hair's a mess despite trying to look nice for this because I came straight from work. Anyways, I'm gonna start to head home and read this book. I'm so excited. I'll show you the signing and the cute little cat doodle. And I just did not have the guts to record anything in there. I also thought it would be like rude to record some of the Q&A. Also, like my camera just like beeps when it starts to record, and it would have been very loud, and this was in like a church and it's quiet and the acoustics are crazy, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. But this was like an amazing experience. God, this was an amazing experience. I'm so glad I was able to do this. And don't be afraid to go to these things alone. Just have more guts to ask someone to take a picture for you if you want a picture. That's my lesson. Okay, so I finished Immortal Longings. This did not take me long to read. I finished it within like 48 hours, and I didn't pick this up right away after the event. It took me a while, like a week or two, to eventually pick it up because some of the initial reviews made me nervous. But I can say I overall really liked this book. I give it a 4-star. And for a while I was thinking it would be like a 3.5 because it was a little hard to get into in the beginning. It was just kind of hard to conceptualize a bit. But by the end, I wanted to just keep reading more and more, and I'm very upset that it'll be a while until I get the next book in the series. But I read this book and listened to the audiobook because I did a lot of driving while I was reading this book, and I started it off by doing the audiobook, which I think was really good for me because it was a little hard to get into. I don't know if that's just because of the book itself or if it was my mental, because I haven't been in the biggest reading mood, or it's been kind of hard to start a book recently, alongside with some of the reviews that this book has gotten so far. Last time I checked, the Goodreads rating was like a 3.75, something like that, which is like close to the rating I gave it of 4 stars. But I really liked it. I'm trying to think, because I didn't pause a lot to give my thoughts while I was reading it, unfortunately, because I just kind of went through it so fast, and I would do a lot of the actual reading kind of late at night where I didn't want to record like a lot of talking clips. But let me tell you, the last 20 pages were really crazy. They were really good. And I liked a lot about this book. It is different than her previously published books, not only just because it's adult, in my opinion, like the time frame of it. Her other books are in I believe like the 1920s, 1930s, and this is just 1990s, and there's some technology discussed. I will say I don't think it would be possible given what this world looks like, but I think having a map in this would be so beneficial for me, because I didn't quite understand like the territory in this book and like who owned what, if that makes sense, because they would talk about Sanar, but then they would kind of talk about other territories, and I did get a little confused with that. And sometimes when I got confused in this book, I was just like, oh well, keep going. But that's just kind of how I get with books. I just kind of roll with the punches. But I really liked the characters. What I thought was really interesting about this book is they're all morally gray characters. None of them are like really good. And that's like kind of okay. When I was reading it, I was remembering some of the stuff she said in the book event I went to, and it was about how she had some of the most fun writing for Augustus, which is the king's son. And knowing that she was like surprised that she had the most fun writing his lines, hearing that, you're like, well, she didn't think she would. So I made some presumptions about that character, and there's still like so much I don't know about like how this will play out, because a lot of it is also politics. In politics, like, you never know who's backstabbing, you never know who's really good, who's really not, how things will end up in the end. I will say the games are not very intense. The games, although they are a big aspect of this book, there's not a lot to it. It's not going to be like the Hunger Games at all, if that's what you're kind of looking for. And I thought it could also be like, oh my god, what was that book called? Serpent and the Wings of the Night. And I think the games are not as intense in this book as they are in that. In this, it's basically there are 88 players and they just knock each other down until there's only one left standing. When there's two left, they go into the Coliseum and duke it out right there. And the games just take place. It could be months for them to take place to get down to 2 players. And it just happens throughout the city. And they have these wristbands, and the wristbands will like give them pings to know where other players are and stuff like that. But I think there are a lot of really interesting concepts in this book. Like Big Brother, like the government always knowing where you are. Every member in the society has an ID that you use for everything, for your bank, to get into your house. I also think it talks about like extraordinary man syndrome, like what gives somebody the right to do things that are pretty much illegal. And then obviously like a main aspect of this is like the body jumping, which was also a little confusing, and I've seen there's like some controversy on it online. But I thought it was done in a good way. Like I understood it enough and I thought it was interesting. I think it does get complicated, and I do think it's an interesting take to discuss like free will in this society. So I think there's a lot of really interesting underlying concepts to this book, and I'm excited for the next ones to come out. I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this and like wanted to keep reading it and listening to the audiobook. I was very sad last night when I finished. I will say the ending of this book, I was hoping something like this would happen, but it does remind me of the ending of another book, which is also the first book in the series. I don't know if anybody else would feel similarly, and obviously I don't want to spoil it, but I'm very curious if anybody makes a similar connection that I do. I think the beginning of the next book will be very, very interesting. There's a lot we're going to need answers for, but yeah, it's dual POV like the rest of her books are, which I think adds a wonderful aspect to it. Well, it's not even just a dual, it's multi POV. Another thing about this book is it's written in third person, which I don't normally enjoy quite as much, but I think it was a good way to tell the story. I do think third person can make it a little bit less exciting. I don't know if I would have thought it would be more exciting if it was in first person, but regardless, I had a great reading experience with it. So if you like Chloe Gong's other books, I would still recommend this one. Or if you like adult fantasy, I would still recommend this one. It was fun. And I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I got to go to the event. It was so cool. I definitely see how the main character is I did something bad coded. And I can see how this is getaway car coded, like she said. But anyways, I have to find something else to read now that will be just as exciting as this was, hopefully. But I definitely want to look for more events to go to like this. She actually just announced her tour dates for Foul Heart Huntsman. And there's one in New York City, which is like I could go to that, but I don't know if I want to go all the way to New York City. But I am really excited for Foul Heart Huntsman because I loved Foul Lady Fortune. So we'll see. I enjoyed the first one I went to so much. We'll see if I end up going to the second one, but those are my thoughts on Immortal Longings, book 1.